In the previous episodes of this series, I tried to present the environment in which Islam emerged. So I talked about the geography of Arabia, and especially Western Arabia. I talked about the economic system centered on the caravan trading structure and how that shaped the Arabian society at the time. The power structures and power centers that emerged at the time, the political economy, if you'd like, as it is called today. I talked about the cultural life of the Arabs and why it was very important actually in the formation of their psyche, and why this will be an important theme for us if and when we trace the evolution of Islam. I talked about the diversity that existed in the religious life of the Arabs at the time, and I discussed the international relations setting of the Arabs in the period right before the emergence of Islam. Today, we arrive at the point in which Islam emerges. And the birth of Islam, the story of the birth of Islam, is very well known for anyone who looked even casually on the history of the religion. So we do know that in Mecca, in this prosperous trading center in the western side of the Arabian Peninsula at the time, a merchant by the name of Muhammad starts calling for a new religion, starts preaching to a very small group of people, his family, and a very, very small group of people in his social circles, and that religion starts to very gradually grow. But what is relevant for us here in this series that tries to trace the flow of the religion itself, the thinking trends in the religion, there are 2 points that I think are very important for us to reflect upon. The first is that unlike in other religions, including monotheistic religions, by the way, unlike in other religions, Islam was born almost as a complete entity, theologically. So from the very first few days, the Prophet Muhammad, until his death 23 years later, has at the center of the religion and how that religion was perceived by effectively everybody around it, the message was very clear. The message was that there is a divine revelation that the Prophet Muhammad received through an angel, and that revelation came in the form of a recitation. That's why in Arabic it's called the Quran, which means a recitation, and that there's no human intervention in it at all. There's no evolution in it at all. It is from A to Z, a divine revelation presented to the people as is. Why is this lack of theological evolution in those very important formative 23 years of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, from the birth of Islam to the death of the Prophet Muhammad? Why that lack of theological evolution is very important for us here in this series? Because it meant 2 things. It meant that for anyone to become Muslim, that person needed to believe into this identity, this nature of Islam as it was presented and perceived. So unlike in other faith systems, you could not attach yourself to Islam seeing it or believing in it only as a social movement, say for justice, or you could not just believe in Islam as a political movement to change the ruling structure that existed at the time. You could not just see it as as a movement, as a social movement to empower certain strata, certain classes of the society, as opposed to others. Many people would say, many historians actually said there was so much of that in Islam in its formative 23 years at the very beginning. Yes, but theologically, for you to become Muslim, Islam had a central idea that was undividable in the way it was presented and perceived, which was you are only going to be Muslim, will only be inside the community if you believed entirely in the idea of the divine revelation and that it is nothing but a divine revelation. This centrality of this idea from the very, very early days and until the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and that there was no evolution of this idea, it was there from the very beginning, is very important for us if we were to see clearly the evolution of Islam over the many centuries that followed and why that idea became of colossal importance to the thinking trends that appeared later on in or within the Islamic civilization as a whole. The second point that is worth reflecting upon is that it was very clear also that because of this nature of Islam in the message and how it was perceived and presented, that it was not going to compromise with the theological systems and therefore the political systems that were there before it emerged. And actually the elders, the ruling people, the ruling classes of Quraysh, of the town in which the Prophet Muhammad lived, and of Western Arabia and Arabia in general at the time, they saw it clearly that there will be no compromise. So irrespective here of the ferocity that they attacked Islam with, intellectually it was quite clear, politically it was also quite clear that there is no compromise going on or going to be there. So the second point that is important for us to reflect upon here is that almost from the very early days, because of the nature of the message, it was on a collision course with what was there before it in Arabia at the time. These 2 points, that both of them emerge from the nature of the message, I think are very important to reflect upon, to bear in mind, if we are to trace clearly the important thinking trends in the journey of Islam.